Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Successfully Educated. I'm Mr. Harris, and today we are going to be talking about the Meyers Briggs Personality Assessment. Now, this assessment has a bunch of letters to it. That's pretty much all I got here, just a bunch of letters. When you break down these letters, really gives us a lot of insight as to who we are as people. Okay, so the Meyers Briggs Personality Style is broken up into several different categories. Mind, nature, energy, and tactics are the four pieces that really go into the Meyers Briggs Personality Style. The mind aspect deals with introversion versus extroversion, which basically just talks about how we interact with society. Energy, which is observant or intuition, focuses on how we see the world. Nature deals with how we process our emotions, and that's comprised of thinking and feeling. And then tactics, which is judging or prospecting, focuses on how we make decisions. So, without further ado, let's jump into more of what this means. What does this code mean? Thinking, feeling, perceiving, prospecting, introvert, extrovert. What does that mean? Let's dive into it. And quick disclaimer here, this is going to be a simple overview, so it's not going to cover absolutely everything that you absolutely need to know, nor is it law. It's just supposed to give a simple little overview, and you can look into it a little more. But if you wanted me to talk about it a little more, please put a comment below letting me know which aspects of this you'd like me to talk about in depth a little more. Let's start with the mind aspect. So this is introversion versus extroversion. So an introvert is basically somebody who has their social energy depleted when they're around people a lot. And so they tend to like to withdraw and focus on activities such as playing an instrument, reading, things that they could do by themselves without interacting with others in order to recharge their mental energy. Whereas an extrovert gets energized by being around people. And so going out, hanging out with people, talking to people really recharges their mental battery. Whereas things like reading, watching Netflix and all that stuff will drain their mental battery. And so they need to do things that involve being social in order to recharge them. So when it comes to energy, that's going to focus on how we perceive the world. So as we looked at observant people are going to focus very heavily on the past, how things have happened in the past, and then how that could affect their future. Whereas intuitive people, they are going to focus on the future and the possibilities that could come from the future. So they're going to look forward. Now, when it comes to the nature aspect, we've got the thinkers and the feelers. Now, the thinkers are always going to think logically, and they're going to have logical ways of approaching life, of approaching situations, of approaching their emotions and coping with their emotions. They have a logical progression for that. Whereas the feelers are going to act instantly on emotion. They're not going to think about rationalization. They're just going to act and go for it. Now, that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. I know I was a little dramatic in my representation, but that is not a bad thing at all. There's a place and time for both. However, there are people who tend to lean towards the logical side, where there are others that tend to lean towards the emotional side. And both have their advantages and disadvantages. So then we have judging and prospecting or perceivers. So that falls into the tactics area. So that's how we make our decisions. So if you are a judger, you're going to focus more so on being organized and staying organized and making sure that you have a solid plan moving forward. Whereas the perceivers or prospectors are going to focus more so on how can I clean things up? Like if something goes wrong, how am I going to make it better? How is this going to work? They like to improvise a little more rather than having like a set plan. They're more so prepared for if an emergency arises or occurs. Whereas judgers are more so going to have a plan put in place so that an emergency doesn't arise. So that is my very abridged, very short version of what are the personality types. So as you notice, there are different letter combinations that can come about, and there's about 16 different letter combinations. And figuring out how you work together is very important. As you are exploring who you are and looking at career paths and looking at your future and romantic relationships, how you're going to be as a parent, how you work with others, it's going to be extremely important. Well, thank you so much for watching. And if you have any questions or want me to expand on any of this, please feel free to leave a comment below. And remember to stay successfully educated.